curiously erotic. What isn't curiously erotic to 16-year-old boys? A shadow emerged from behind the nearest tent, and Michael practically impaled himself on his lance as he tried to get it pointed in the right direction. "It's only me." Daphne, alights on the cloud, stepped into the moonlight, leading one of the band's ponies. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "I thought maybe I'd ride down to the creek. Want to come?" Daphne was hot. She was almost 2 years older than Michael, and so Sports Illustrated swimsuit issues stacked that she'd become the subject of all manner of his fantasies in the few days since they'd started filming This Old Teepee. Sure," he said. He was surprised she wanted anything to do with him. Every time he tried to hit on her, he'd turned into such a fumble-mouth that he'd been certain she'd assigned him the role of last dork on earth to be caught dead with. "Want a horse?" she asked. "Or do you want to just double up with me?" The idea of riding next to her, letting the horse's gait rock their bodies against each other, was enough to put a strain on the fabric of his breechcloth. He couldn't ride well. He didn't want to show her what a nerd he was by falling off the great beast. Worse yet, let her realize exactly how excited he was to be anywhere near her. "You ride, I'll run." It wasn't far. "I need the exercise." "Okay." She grabbed a handhold of mane and swung onto the horse's back. Getting her legs around its girth caused her deerskin dress to hike up enough to send a whole new series of signals inside his breechcloth. He started trotting ahead, leading the way so she wouldn't notice that, at the moment, he was equipped with more than one lance. The run to the creek helped rein in his raging hormones. By the time she slid down and tied up the horse, then led the way along the little path through the trees and scrubbed down to the muddy stream, he was presentable. The relative dusk of moon shadows provided cover. Just short of where sand had piled up along the near bank and formed a perfect beach, she stopped suddenly and turned to face him. "Maybe we can take a dip." Before he could stammer a wildly enthusiastic answer, hey, what was she going to wear? She couldn't get in the water with that buckskin dress. She continued, "But first I gotta pee. Wait here, Michael, and don't look." Michael fought the temptation to peek. He didn't want to mess up this chance. He would have waited forever, as long as there was a possibility he might go skinny dipping with the delicious Daphne. He kind of needed to pee too, but when he managed to extract himself from the unfamiliar confines of his breechcloth, he discovered he was far too excited to do any such thing. Just the thought of Daphne, hiking up her skirt a few feet away, was almost too much for him. He knew he'd better tuck himself safely away before she came back, and his state of arousal scared her off. The creek gurgled invitingly, and there was something else, sand grinding, as if something was coming their way. It wasn't coming from the direction Daphne had taken. He dropped to his hands and knees and peered toward where the road cut off the east end of the pasture that housed their encampment, at the old wooden bridge over the stream. The sound came from there. A silhouette appeared atop the bridge. It was a motorcyclist, idling along with the lights off. Was this someone else who couldn't sleep, or someone following them? The shadowy biker rumbled across the old wooden structure. Michael stood and watched and made sure it disappeared behind the brush on the far side of the creek. The sound of its passing was soon inaudible. "What was that?" Daphne was straightening her leather dress as she stepped back onto the path. And then she was looking down at him, and he realized he had forgotten to stuff himself back inside his breechcloth. And she was saying, "Oh, I know what that is," and reaching down to pull up the hem of her leather skirt again. He forgot all about the motorcycle when he realized she wasn't wearing anything underneath. Talk about a quickie, Daphne thought. He was already done before she could more than prop herself against the trunk of a cottonwood. Good thing she hadn't gotten her dress all the way off, or the bark might have scraped her back. That was fast. She couldn't keep the disappointment out of her voice. He was breathing too hard to answer. It didn't matter. She had yet to meet a teenage boy who wasn't multi-orgasmic, and they were usually desperate enough for what she'd just provided to do anything to have it again. She was sure Michael would perform as asked.